Okay, so I'm starting the recording and transcription. And before we get going, I want to thank everyone for showing up tonight, especially our presenters. Barney Christensen from Christensen TDS Law, managing partner for the law offices in Portage La Prairie, Neepawa, Gladstone, and McGregor. And our second presenter, Christian Robin, who's the Director of Marketing and Web Presence for Red River College Polytech. And before we get into the agenda, I just want to say that Red River College is committed to ensuring that First Nations, Métis, and Inuit knowledge, culture and traditions are embraced and reflected in the pursuit of our mission. And we want to acknowledge that the lands that we're on today and that of Red River College, a commitment to Indigenous people and community. And this now forms part of our foundational statements that define Red River College. It's part of our strategic plan. Red River College Polytech campuses are located on the original lands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, Dene people, and this is also the homeland of the Métis Nation. And we are committed to a renewed relationship and dialogue with First Nations and Métis and Inuit people, based on the principles of mutual trust, respect, and reciprocity. And we respect the treaties that were made on these territories, and we dedicate ourselves to move forward in a partnership with Indigenous communities in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. And next, I want to tell you about the Portage Innovation Center. It's a 768 square foot space, which is on the bottom floor of Red River College Polytech Portage campus, which is at 32 5th Street Southeast in Portage La Prairie, Manitoba. This is a partnership between Red River College Polytech and Communities Building Youth Futures, and we help entrepreneurs and innovators further discover the ideas that they have. We're working to create a community of innovators supporting innovation within the city of Portage La Prairie. The space has room for 4 entrepreneurs in residence, where if you're working on a new business idea or product idea, you're able to set up your very first office and get your idea up and running. People who become an entrepreneur in residence have access to Red River College Polytech business students for help in setting up financials, marketing, business plan. They also have access to our administrative assistant students to help arrange meetings that are critical to your success, help to make appointments, as well as set up some event planning. If your business or product idea requires tech expertise, you will have access to our information technology students from the Winnipeg campuses. Individuals using our facilities will have access to a menu of Portage businesses who want to help you succeed and will donate time and provide you with the advice on legal issues, banking, insurance, networking, mentorship, and more. And Barney is one of those people who are willing to donate their time. In order to help our innovators with prototyping and small-scale manufacturing, our Fab Lab or Makerspace houses a laser engraving machine, Cricut 3 maker machine, 3D printer, and an assortment of hand tools, as well as some computers and multifunction printer and a heavy-duty sewing machine. For membership information, please contact Red River College Polytech at 204-856-1914. Our vision is to create a community and atmosphere of innovation and entrepreneurship in Portage La Prairie, and for our community to be known provincially for its innovative spirit. And now, without further ado, I would like to introduce Barney Christensen, who's going to tell us about registering a business name, as well as when to do that and when and how to incorporate for the right type of business. So Barney.
Thank you, Guy. I feel that I need to explain a t-shirt that I'm wearing as opposed to lawyers get up. And that's because for those of you who are seeing this live, we're in day 2 of a 3-day storm, apparently. And I'm stuck in the village of High Bluff, Manitoba, and got my fingers crossed that ExploreNet won't go out again. But I'm looking forward to this. I assume there will be time at the end for questions. Happy to answer any that I can. As Guy mentioned, I've been asked to look at the complexity of registering a business name, and then why you'd want to do it and when you really need to do it. The complexity only arises if you're going to be difficult about the name you want to use for your business. And I'll outline it briefly, but one of the reasons, by the way, and I'm skipping ahead, coming right back, is there's almost no business you can run that will make any sense if you don't register your name. A business includes every trade, every occupation, every profession or venture conducted or carried on with a view to profit or gain. Well, you're not going to go into a business unless you want to make some money out of it. There are limited exceptions. For instance, if all you do is have your name on the business, Guy Moffat, that's your business. Well, you still have to put up a sign on the front of your premises announcing that you're Guy Moffat and that you're in business as something. As you'll hear in the marketing, having a sign on the front of your house isn't going to be a big marketing tool, other than for the odd neighbor who drives by and wonders why you're doing it. So with that said, there are, of course, limits on what you can have for a name. You can't use a prohibited name. For instance, you can't say Manitoba's photographer Joe Smith unless you get a special exception from the director of the company's office. And you're not going to get that unless you've had that business for years and years and years using that name. You can't have a name that has general words or only describes the nature of the business. Photography studio, not good enough. It's got to have more than that. It can't be just a surname. You can't say your business is Christensen. It can't be a geographical name only. High Bluff. It can't be too similar to other names. If you want to start Joe's Cartage and Joe's Trucking is already registered in Manitoba, you won't get Joe's Cartage. It's too close. If there's Joe's Trucking and you want to start Joe's Photography, you might be okay because they're not going to be confused because of the descriptive word that's added to it. Sadly, in this day and age, they have to tell people that you can't actually register a name that's obscene or that on public grounds would be objectionable. And you can think of all kinds of things you're seeing on Twitter these days that would not allow that person to register a business name. You can't register a name that has a distinctive or a descriptive element. And what the company's office will do in those circumstances is say, we'll do this if you add, and then they want that descriptive or distinctive element. You can't just say Joe's Groceries. Well, give me more. Are you going to have a store? Or you got groceries in your basement? Those kind of things would be the type of things that the company's office would want to look at. Now, in terms of registration, there's a shortcut if you are prepared to do it on your own. You go to the Manitoba Company's Office webpage, and you will see there the forms. Click on the link that says Forms, and you'll get to a page that has forms for the Business Names Registration Act, which is the legislation governing the registration of a business, and in documents relating to corporations. If you open up that page, you will see a form that you could fill in online, or you can download it, do it on paper. And it's going to tell you the first thing you've got to do is reserve a business name. And that's where the critical elements of using a name that's going to make sense. Joe Smith's Portage de Prairie Photography Studio will get registered as long as there isn't another Joe Smith's Photography Studio or J. Smith's Photography Studio in Portage de Prairie that's got that descriptive element in the name. If you want something that's really complex, then you might be wise to talk to a lawyer or someone else who's done it before and get some advice as to whether this particular name that you have in mind might get registered. it costs $45 to have the company's office reserve the name. The process is actually fairly complex, but not for you. You fill in the form that they give you. They want to know when you're going to start your business, or when you started your business, where you are, your address, who you are, your full name, those kind of basic details, and the name you want to use and why you want to use that name. Then they go through what's called a nuance search. You don't need to know that. What they do is run all of the registered corporations or business names in Manitoba and then across Canada. The across Canada ones become relevant if you want to do your business outside of Manitoba. Because if Joe Smith's Photography is registered in Saskatchewan and you want to do weddings in Saskatchewan, you're not going to be able to use the name you registered in Manitoba. So you might want to think about that when you're picking your name. Again, if the Joe Smith's Photography in Regina has registered in Manitoba because they want to do weddings here, you're not going to get that name. Right on the face of it, though, it will say to you, your name is accepted or rejected. If it's accepted, the rest of the 8 or 9 pages you'll get are just for your information. You can register in Manitoba. That costs you $45. Every time you go back because they rejected one, you're going to have to pay another $45. Once you get an approved name, the next step is to register that name. And again, there's an online form, relatively basic. You will absolutely record in that you have the name approved already, that's reserved. And they will get your details again, and then they will take $60 from you. The registration is good for 3 years, and you have to renew it every 3 years or you lose it. It's important to do that if you want to keep the name, because as soon as your name is lost because you failed to renew and somebody else registers that name, you're out of luck. You can't use it. And people, the Business Names Registration Act is probably the most ignored piece of legislation in Manitoba. People all of the time are putting a sign out front or going on the internet and carrying on business without any protection from the Business Names Registration Act. The government doesn't have inspectors driving around looking for people who have a business but haven't registered it. But as you're going to hear in marketing, one of the keys to being successful in business is to have a brand and to have reliable customers. If you fail to register and you're carrying on business as Joe's Custom Saddles, and you haven't registered, and then a guy at Notre Dame registers Joe's Custom Saddles, anybody who goes on the internet is going to find him, not you. And he can tell you to quit using that name because he's registered, you're not. And he doesn't want you conflicting with his clients. So every client that you related to during the stretch that you were using the name and he hadn't registered may be lost. Similarly, you don't want someone else to register a similar name because of your success. You have Joe's Custom Saddles, you're doing all kinds of business through Manitoba, and somebody else says, gee, I'd like a piece of that. So they register the name and then show up at the Morris Stampede and start selling saddles that are nowhere near the quality of yours. They're crap, people buy them, they're disenchanted, and they never trust Joe's Custom Saddles again. So in terms of, if you want your business to go forward, you have to protect what amounts to being your goodwill and your general reputation. And for a total of, if you get the name on the first time, $105, absolutely do it as soon as you can. You'll see on the form, it says you have to register within 30 days of starting business, or within 30 days before you start the business. They don't blink when you mention, I've been doing it for 9 years, but get it done if you want to preserve your equity. Incidentally, if you're not aware of it, there's only 3 ways to carry on a business in Manitoba, indeed in all of Canada except Quebec. A sole proprietorship, that's you all by yourself. A partnership. Now, there's sub-partnerships, a limited liability partnership, for instance, a equity partnership. Those are special animals that most people would not be using for a business. It's not uncommon for medical clinics or law firms to have a LLP, as they refer to it, but forget it. For most business people, it's not relevant. And you can have one partner, or you can have 100 partners. The only piece of advice I'll give you on that, and it's not to be referred, or it's not mentioned in the program, is that get a partnership agreement. Even if it is your spouse, you're going into a business situation that's very close to a marriage. And if things go sideways, you're not going to be able to talk things through. So do the partnership agreement first. Now, the question of incorporation, and it's significantly more expensive, especially if you use a lawyer, and you're insane if you try to do it without a lawyer. I get very frustrated at the company's office because, again, you can go online. It'll give you the forms to create what are called articles of incorporation. Every company has articles of incorporation. All you got to do is pay them $350. Great, I got articles of incorporation. I'm all set. No, you're not. Canada Revenue Agency will not recognize the existence of a corporation until it has issued shares and those shares have been paid for. So let's assume that you want to save money, so you pay the $350 and get your articles of incorporation, and away you go. 3 years later, the Canada Revenue Agency notices that we're not seeing a lot of GST returns from this guy. So they come and do an audit. When they come to our office as part of an audit of a corporation, the first thing they ask for is the minute book. The minute book is that compilation of documents that relates to corporation. Excuse me. Remember, a corporation is, for all intents and purposes, a person. It has all the same rights as any person, but it has no brains, no blood, no flesh, no bones. It has paper. And if it doesn't have the paper, it's dead. So CRA shows up at your house, says, let me see the minute book. You say, what's a minute book? They will then reassess every dollar you owned, or the so-called corporation earned. For instance, if we're talking year 3, the corporation may have paid taxes on it, but the corporation doesn't exist. So every dollar of that income from 3 years ago is attributed to you personally. Well, the corporate income tax rate is 17%, and yours is minimum of 37 or something like that, going up to as high as 53. That money is attributed to you. They calculate the tax. You can't claim any of the deductions that the company paid because you didn't pay them. So 100% of that income is added to your income for that year. You didn't pay the tax on that. So now you owe a penalty equal to 100% of the taxes not paid. You owe them interest from the time 3 years ago until now, and you owe them the taxes you didn't pay. Step forward to year 2, they do the same thing to you. Step forward to this year, and bingo, you're hit again. You're bankrupt. So think about that. Make sure your corporation is fully set up. Now, one of the things that could be a challenge in determining whether you should incorporate relates to the fact that it does 2 things for you. The first thing it does, and this is the one that the accountants focus on, is it reduces your income tax load. You create a corporation, you can hire staff. The staff can be family members as long as they're legitimately attending work and working for you. You can pay yourself a wage. The money coming into the company is only taxed at 17%. It's got all these deductions, wages, and so forth. And you can really lower the tax burden on the corporation and yet still have money to live on using the tax benefits that are available through a corporation. In that case, you're going to be talking to an accountant and saying, where's the magic point where the cost of having a corporation is justified to the taxes I save? When I say the cost, it does cost you, if you're using a lawyer, anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000 to set it up. If you go to an accountant right away, they always charge more than the lawyers. They don't like hearing that, but I always say it. The second thing is that each year, the corporation has to file a tax return. And you do. So you've doubled your accounting costs for the tax returns. Plus, each year, the company has to do certain things to maintain its life. One of those is it has to file an annual return with the company's office. Now, it's different than a tax return. It doesn't cost a lot of money, but if you don't do that in 2 successive years, the company's office dissolves your corporation. So you got to do that. The second thing is, according to the company's office or the Companies Act, the corporation has to have an annual general meeting. And it doesn't matter whether there's just one shareholder, one director, one officer, same guy, or 20 of you. 90% of the corporations we deal with are either solo shareholders, sole officer and director, or they're family held type corporations. And no, we don't want to come into your office and have a meeting. But we can do, if all of the officers, directors, or shareholders that are involved sign a resolution, you can avoid the meeting. And again, most of the time, that's what happens. It's absurd or seems absurd when you're the only person in the company. But what you have to do is you, as a director, have to sign a resolution calling a meeting. You, as a shareholder, have to attend that meeting, but you can sign this resolution saying, I'm happy with what the director did last year. I'm going to reappoint him as director. And then that director signs a resolution saying, I decided I'll be president. And you've got these 3 resolutions. Right now, that's costing anywhere from $350 to $500 every year. Now, those are expenses that can grind on you if you're closer to the lower end of the financial range. Because again, you may be talking to an accountant about those tax returns. That's why you talk to an accountant and say, is it justified to spend this kind of money every year based on the taxes I can save? Once they say yes, go for it. Absolutely. However, there's another reason to have a corporation, and that's because of the restricted liability. If you're a farming corporation, there's probably not many things you can do that will endanger anybody else. So you're not necessarily worried about protecting your own personal assets from the corporation's activities. But if you're installing gas pipelines, if you're doing anything where you could potentially cause harm to others, for instance, you build basement foundations and you don't do it right, the house falls in, you get sued for $100,000 or $300,000. So you want to be incorporated so it's the business that's building the foundation. Only the business is liable for what it does. So if the basement falls in, it can grab the corporation. So what? You can set up the corporation so that all of the equipment belongs to you personally, and you rent it to the company. So you lose nothing. You certainly don't lose your house, which is what most people worry about. You probably can't, not just probably, you can never escape the banks. When you borrow money from a bank or a credit union to carry on your business, they immediately get you to sign a personal guarantee. So that's one debt you're not going to escape. But on top of that, if you're in an industry where you have to acquire a lot of supplies, stock, and you spend a lot of money putting a whole bunch of inventory into the business, and then people quit dealing with you, or the economy goes south and people quit buying, you're suddenly going to have trade creditors looking at you. Where's our money? Well, if it's in a corporation, if the debt's in a corporation, too bad, so sad, ship back what you can, but you're not going to lose your house. In those type of situations, you have to make the assessment, is it worth spending that money to protect my family assets, whether I save any taxes or not? And there are certain industries, there are certain businesses where that's absolutely the thing you want to do, because you want to succeed, but success can be beyond your control. One of your employees drives the backhoe through the side of the house. You're going to be on the hook because you are responsible for what your employees do on the job. And you don't want to lose everything. You better have a corporation doing the construction that led to that backhoe going into the bathroom, because otherwise it's going to cost you way too much personally. You also buy insurance, but that's not good enough. You may not be able to claim on the insurance. For instance, if you didn't ask the right questions about your employee, and it turns out he's got a drinking habit or a drug habit, and the insurance company is saying it's your fault, you should have looked after that. So those are the type of things that you have to consider. Now, in this day and age, there's absolutely a need to market. And I want to mention a couple of things before Christian takes over. In my industry, there's lots of people who want to start their own law practice. They don't want to be in big firms. They can't get a job at a big firm. Whatever it is, they want to start on their own. And some fail. And I don't think the reasons for failure in a solo law practice are all that different from some of the reasons that you might fail in your own business. And one of them is you don't have the appropriate expectations of what you're going to face. In the law profession in the States, for example, it's generally a rule that you're going to spend 1/3 of your time practicing law. You're going to spend 1/3 of your time on administration, and you're going to spend 1/3 of your time on marketing. Well, they have a much higher density of lawyers in the States than here, so we don't have to spend as much time on marketing, but everything else applies. And in any business, yeah, you want to be a photographer, great. You may be a very good one. If you don't get your GST returns filed, if you don't collect your bills, if you don't send out your bills, if you don't give the quotes and follow up on them, if you don't keep your equipment maintained, all of those other things, your business is going to go south. You can take pretty pictures, but you're still going to fail. So you have to recognize that a big portion of your time is not doing what you like. It's doing that other stuff that you probably don't like, but it's got to be done. And that's the reasonable expectations that you got to have. I know that when we were dealing with corporate clients, I'll say, hey, you take the pictures, I'll do the paper. Because they need to keep the company live. So I can do that much for them. The accountants can take care of the books. It's going to cost you. How much more time could you spend on photography if you didn't have to do the books, if you didn't have to do the paper for the law corporation? So those are the type of things that you got to think about. I guess the second one, if you're going to be self-employed, is commitment. It's not fun all of the time. I've been in private practice since 1974. And I got to tell you, as a self-employed lawyer, I work for the biggest jerk in town. He won't give me time off. He doesn't care if it's Christmas and so forth. You are acting for yourself, and you can't say, you know what, I don't feel like working today. You can't do that as a self-employed person. And I think the other reason, at least in the legal profession we see, and I think it probably can happen in any field, is people forget about the clients, the customers. If you're a grouchy person, you better go into a business that doesn't involve a lot of customer contact, because you've got to relate to them. You don't have to be servile or anything like that, but you have to be able to cope with good clients, bad clients, stupid clients, lying clients. All of those other things can happen, and you've got to handle it if you want to build a business. Those are the type of things that we see in our profession as affecting people. Now, again, in any business, I think that these days, you're probably going to have customers. If you're in the industrial business of some sort, you may only have 5 or 6. If you annoy one of them, there goes 20% of your business. So you've got to handle those 5 or 6. If your business counts on 100 customers a month, you still can't risk annoying people, disappointing them, and so forth, because they'll go on to Facebook or any other social media and say, never deal with that Christensen again. He doesn't know his rear end from a telegraph pole. And that's the type of thing you can't risk in this day and age that you might have been able to tolerate pre-social media. And I think that's a good place to start talking about marketing, because in the 21st century, a lot of your marketing, besides word of mouth, which is great, is got to be done in social media. And Christian, I have no clue about that stuff. Somebody else does it for me at my office. So take it away.
Is that a gentleman named Mike by any chance? Do I know Mike? Is that... Okay, thanks so much. Guy, do you want me to just go ahead and try to share my screen and do I got a presentation that helps guide this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, let's give it a shot here. All right. This should do it. How's that look?
We're good.
All right, perfect. Okay. Yeah, it's working. Great. Thanks so much. All right, welcome everyone. So yeah, thanks for passing it off. For me, I've been asked to speak on the importance of brand and marketing for startups. It's a great topic. I currently work for, as was mentioned, for RC Polytech, which is not a startup by any stretch, but I do have some experience in that, and so I will talk about that as well. So what are we going to talk about today? Let's break it down a little bit. So for the agenda for my presentation and conversation, hopefully, is brand versus marketing. I'll touch a little bit on the difference, the importance of brand, marketing for startups, and Q&A. And if we're recording, maybe not, but we can always see if there's any pieces to that. So who is this dude? Very quickly, I have 9+ years of higher education, done a lot of different degrees, business background, business degrees, and a master's degree in tourism marketing. I've done 20+ years in brand and marketing, so I kind of have a bit of a background there in the professional setting, and 10 years working with startups. And I do want to define that. I did participate in a lot of programs and projects with our ACE project space at RC Polytech's Exchange District campus, where I mentored some entrepreneurs into their startup business on the field of brand and marketing. And I also am a judge with the Stu Clark Center for Entrepreneurship. What I do there is I judge business plans for startups. Sometimes I actually am a logo judge as well, which we'll talk about in a bit. And that's a really fun thing to be a judge for if you know what you're doing. And I'm also the son of an entrepreneur. So my father was an entrepreneur. So I grew up going to his different businesses and working there. And so I got to manage a store it was a video store. For those of you who are old enough to remember those, when I was 14, I got to manage one of those, and so I learned a lot about entrepreneurship. All right, so brand versus marketing. What's the difference? All right, so what's a brand? If you pull up any sort of a dictionary definition of a brand, you'll see that it's a noun. And this is just a fun one to read. It's the sum total of all visual and non-visual, verbal and non-verbal, tangible and non-tangible elements that help identify, form, create, and influence unique and positive associations for a product, service, or entity that differentiates it from its competition, creating meaning, value, and preference in one's mind. All right, so that's a mouthful. I don't expect anyone to ever remember that. Here's my preferred definition. This is from Jeff Bezos. Your brand is what people say when you're not in the room. So that is a brand. It is a promise that you want your customers to believe. And the act of branding is how you convey the main message of your business. So a brand can make you feel something. It occupies a space in your mind. I'll talk more about that in a minute. It has a huge impact, so you don't want to leave it to chance. So I figured we'd try it out for just a minute. So here we have two brands. This is their visual representation here, but of course, beyond the visual representation, we see these two logos and these brand representations, and we have a feeling. One of them probably makes you feel a little better than the other. So even looking at their mission statements, which is really important when you're building a business, Lowe's is deliver the right home improvement products with the best service and value. And the Home Depot is provide the highest level of service and the broadest selection of products with the most competitive prices. So they're very, very similar, but one of them makes you feel better than the other. And that is the effect of brand. It could be anything that's taken place. It could be your interaction with them. It could be that you prefer the color orange over the color blue. It could be that it's closer to home. It could be a number of different things. It could be that someone you know works there. That is the impact of brand. And so it will stay with you for a very long time until such interactions and connections to your mind have changed. And so what about these two brands? Right? Most people will say, oh, I prefer one over the other. In fact, there's a lot of interesting studies on Coke versus Pepsi. And in fact, the chemical makeup of these two products is almost identical. And many people actually cannot tell the difference between the two, but yet they definitely prefer one over the other. And so the impact of a brand really can't be overstated when it comes to things like this. And then here's one that I thought I'd pull up, given the generation I'm likely speaking to, younger audiences. There is a preference here in terms of the brand. Most adults have a mobile phone, of course, and so do most teenagers now. And functionality in these two brands is very, very similar, yet the expression of their brand is very different. And so we have a feeling towards one over the other. And that is very, very helpful in your startup. And that's why I just wanted to bring some examples. So importance of brand. It means nothing until it means something. And that is a really interesting point about the marketing funnel. So psychology is very much at the core of branding. As soon as you're aware of something, anything, your brain immediately has to associate it. It will categorize it. It will put it in something, in a file folder in your brain. And it can move around for a while, but once it gets in that file folder for a certain period of time, it kind of gets ingrained there, and it's very difficult to change. And so a brand that resonates with your customers is very, very paramount to your business. And so the more it resonates, the more it evokes that positive feeling, and the easier it is to move customers through the funnel. And that's why it's so important, because you actually save money if you have a very strong brand, one that resonates with your customers. So that awareness, once they're aware of your brand and they've made that association that is positive, they will move down the purchase funnel, and they will build in the end, a stronger loyalty to your brand in return. So it's very, very important for startups to really take your time on that part of it. And so how do you do that? There's different ways and information I wanted to make sure I shared with you. Where do you start, right? And so I like to say, start by defining your white space. And this is a white space chart, and you can find many of them online. In this example, there are two axes. One is high versus low price, and low versus high quality. There are different ways to do this, but you want to find a space that is that has less competitors in that area, and that's very important when you're looking at a brand. And you want to, of course, look at your primary audience. You want to position your brand in the mind of your audience, right? So it's not necessarily what your mind thinks, it's what your audience mind thinks. And so focus is your friend. In a startup environment especially, do not try to be all things to all people. You'll want to very much focus. You can always expand that audience bubble through different product offerings or different services, but you want to start very, very focused. And by doing so, my favorite trick for startups that I like to talk about is try to define who isn't your target audience. A lot of times that's easier. You say, well, we certainly are not targeting, children under the age of 5, or maybe we're not targeting people over the age of 60 for whatever reason. It might be demographic, or it might be geographic. You might say we're not targeting people outside of the borders of Manitoba, for example. So do consider that audience and refine it and define it. And you want to do this early. Too many businesses only consider their audience once they've launched, and that is a big mistake. So you want to plan ahead. Getting started on the identity, you should get creative. Perform an environmental scan, see what your competitors are doing, and try to differentiate. And that's really, really key. And so remember as well, and this is sort of the pro tip, that emotional always resonates over the practical. This is just human psychology. And with the college, for example, we try to focus on the emotional connection to a life-changing educational journey, careers, friendships, experiences, instead of things like, we have ample parking, or there's great coffee, or there are comfortable study areas. The experience, the emotional will always lead the rational when it comes to, or the practical when it comes to a brand. And interestingly, this is a sidebar and maybe pro tip, but maybe don't use it right away, but negative actually resonates over positive. And so it's that idea of solving something that really annoys you as opposed to making you feel even better. And that's why negative advertising is used a lot in politics. It does resonate better. Everyone always asks me about logos, so a lot of background there. The logo is the visual expression of your brand, right? This is how you communicate your offering in less than 1 second. So it also acts as your stamp of approval. If you see this logo, you can expect X or Y. I'm sure all of you have seen these logos, and you can associate it right away with something you see. Oh, if that logo were on that product or service, I would expect X or Y to take place, whether that's quality or personality or speed. There's always an association, and that's really key. And that's why your logo does become a very integral or key part of your brand. Lots can be said about logos. I could go on this topic literally for hours. Shape, color, use of words, they all matter, and they all say something about your brand. And it is important, as I mentioned before, to plan ahead. And I'll give you a couple of good examples, but some pro tips: look for white space in the logo world as well. So if your competitors are all using blue, you may not want to have blue. Now, also look for the leaders in your industry or sector. Industry leaders in the sector can also help give positive associations. So for example, if I were opening up a coffee shop, I may consider a green, because a green is already associated with Starbucks, which is a strong brand. And keep it simple. Again, I could talk about this for hours, but legibility is very, very key these days. It should work in black and white and in color. It should have an aspect ratio, so it should be sized appropriately to fit on different products or services. And it should be able to be seen well in reverse. If you look at these logos in particular, if they were in a mirror, I would still identify them immediately. And some logos you just couldn't. So there's all kinds of different aspects to consider. Here's just a few examples of some bad logos, and I've seen many in my day. For every good logo, there's approximately 100 bad ones. And so my pro tip to you here as a startup is do engage a professional in this. It can be very inexpensive to do. You can find a freelancer or even work with students that are professionals in their field, as opposed to try and make your own. Okay, so brand identity. I did want to talk quickly about short names, initialisms, abbreviations. acronyms, because this is an interesting little piece here, is that back in the day when Skip the Dishes came out, they invited me to their offices. They were in a startup, and they knew what I did with startups, and we had a nice chat. And I remember looking at their logo and thinking, okay, well, we'll see. And I gave a little critique, and one of the things that I noticed right away was that Skip the Dishes in abbreviation or initialism is STD. And so they kind of went, ooh. I don't know if they'd realized it already or not, but you can see now that they've evolved to just Skip, which is shorter, simpler, and seems to work better for where they're at now. You need to consider these things. It's good to do some environmental scans to test it, do some online research, and check for the domain name. So obviously you'll want a website that I'll talk about that in a minute in terms of tactics. And that website domain name should be available. You don't want to use a website domain name that is quite popular. Incidentally, there's a new app that's being released. It's called Parallel. It's being done by Chris Schmidt, who's a startup guru here in Manitoba. He actually started GeoFilter Studios, which was the largest filter producer of filters in Snapchat for many years. Anyways, he exited that and sold it for lots and lots of money, and now started a company called Parallel. And when I chatted with him about it and where he was going, and now it's really growing, I said to him, "Oh, did you look up the name?" And he had spent very little time with the name. And as it turns out, the domain name was being used, and there are other businesses using that sort of concept. So he's struggling a bit there, but I'm sure he'll figure it out because he's very smart. Okay, marketing for startups, platforms, channels, and tactics. The last section of this that is a little bit more where the rubber meets the road here. So definitely register a domain and build a website. Now, a lot of startups find this daunting and even challenging. It doesn't have to be. You don't want to do this. This is a bad example, but your website is the expression of your brand online, and it can be something that you can control, which is great. It's a great place to have a message that you control. It allows you to be found, and it provides legitimacy. You would be surprised at how many people I work with who will not do business with an organization that doesn't have a website. It can just be a simple one page. Here's our information. Here's what we do. Here's our contact information. Beyond that, there's lots that a website can provide, which is really important. It can provide a lot of research. Of course, you want to ask questions to your target audience and your customer base, but your website can actually answer a lot of those questions for you. You can track user behavior. You can analyze the data. There's lots of it. And the website is key for this. I'll just keep going here. Content marketing. And on the content marketing side, your website can be a great place for that. You can add a blog, you can add videos, you can add infographics. There are all kinds of free air quote hooks that you can provide that get people to your website and talking about your product. And that's really great for search engine optimization, which is really key in this environment of where people search for things online. And incidentally, I would say that is something to consider when you're looking at a name for your business. Do think about the name in a search context. Sometimes people will try to come up with a name that is quite generic or maybe aspirational, but has very little to do with the product offering or service offering, which can be detrimental in the search economy. When people are using Google to find you, they're not necessarily searching your name, they're searching for the kind of product that you offer. So a website will be very important in all that. I did want to touch very quickly on some other different tactics that are out there that you'll want to consider in terms of traditional marketing. So that's your radio, television, print, out of home. There are pros and cons to these things, but my advice to startups is that do consider them, do look at them, because there is a rule of purchase, and that is that someone will typically require 7 touch points before they purchase a product or service from a business. And so what traditional media can do very well is provide those additional touch points. And that's why it can get really tricky with attribution. So where did my customer come from? I've got radio ads, I've got TV ads, I've got newsprint ads. and I don't know which one it was. Oh, it must have been the Facebook ad because there's it tells me there was a click through, but that could have been the 7th touch point, and often is, in fact, the 7th touch point. So that's why I did want to touch quickly on traditional marketing. Digital advertising. So huge topic. I certainly won't have time to go into today, but I could do an hour presentation on digital advertising. But in terms of the topic today, which is around startups, you do want to, of course, be online, and you do want to be available or prepared with digital marketing of sorts. That can be advertising, and I did want to touch quickly on that. Advertising includes all kinds of different pieces. We've all seen them. There's display ads. There's retargeting ads that show up. There's ads that show up on apps and on mobile devices. And there's search engine marketing, which can be things like Google ads, which when you search, you'll see that they're at the top of the search results. There's an ad. It looks very much like a search result, but it says very clearly that this is an ad. You will want to consider those things in your toolkit, depending on what kind of business you're in, and also depending on where you think your customers are in terms of that purchase funnel, that marketing funnel. Are they just aware of your product and therefore, or not quite aware of your product even, and therefore need to be made more aware of what you offer? Or are they really ready to purchase your product or service, and you just need to make sure that you rank highly in their search results, or that you show up? And so those are things you really want to consider. Social media, also a massive topic. And so I did want to just touch very quickly for startups. You do want to have an organic presence. That can be very simple, but really important that you do it well and consistently. What I mean by that is, let's say you wanted to have a Twitter account or a LinkedIn account, depending on the type of business you're in, or a Facebook account. What you'll want to do is make sure that that content is updated regularly. There's lots and lots of studies to show that if someone goes to your social media page or social media account and see that you haven't posted in a matter of even days, sometimes they'll go, well, this business isn't with it. They're not updating the content regularly enough. And so you want to try and have something almost every other day. And it doesn't have to be complicated. It can just be a very simple product offering, or even better, something related to just the sector that you're in, something that you found intriguing or interesting. That is very important. And you do not want to be on all the platforms. Everyone always says, oh, I got to be on the newest platform. I got to be on TikTok now. And yes, TikTok is excellent, and it's probably a good idea to be on there, but not if you can't do it right. And so you're better off just not being on there at all. My advice to you as a startup business, if it's one that you're hoping to grow into a large business, is to register your accounts with all the social media platforms, but only use the ones that you think you can do well. I've got two other interesting slides I think make great topics for startups. One is PR marketing. This is one of my favorites. It can be very inexpensive. It does come with some risks, so be prepared. But this on the screen is an example of some PR marketing that I did with the college back in 2013. Our residence at the college had just opened, and we didn't have very many residents registered to stay there. In fact, we had, I think, just a handful. We have 100 rooms, and the college panicked and said, "Oh my, we need to do something." And I said, "Great, I can come up with something. How much money do we have for this?" And they said, "We don't have any money. We have $1,000." And so I said, "I can work with that." And so we took that $1,000, and remember, this isn't a startup, this is a large company. We took that $1,000 and we bought 2 small ads in the newspaper in the back then in 2013, the careers section. They don't quite have that much anymore. And we advertised Winnipeg's greatest summer job. And we said, come stay in our residence, be a blogger and a vlogger. So go out there and talk about your experiences, and you will get to stay there for free. And every night you will get tickets to either dinner or a show or something around in the Exchange District, but you have to write about it. And so we had over 100 applicants from 12 different countries apply for this job. We ended up hiring someone who did an excellent job of sharing the information. But while that blogger and vlogger did an excellent job, we were full even before we started the campaign because of the PR that we got, the media attention that we got just for the job posting. Never mind what all came out of that. So a great way to look at great PR marketing is to, I'll give you a pro tip or maybe a secret, is Google what others are doing. You know, Google best PR campaigns, and you'll find some that you can adapt. You'll never find something that's exactly right, but you'll find something you can adapt. And in fact, that's what we did here. There was something with Tourism Queensland that was very similar, and we said, oh, this could work. And lastly, I did want to talk about my personal favorite, even over PR marketing, which is guerrilla marketing. And guerrilla marketing can have a great impact on startups. It can be anything from, and I don't mean this guerrilla, I mean guerrilla marketing. And the greatest impacts from guerrilla marketing is just people paying attention, those viral qualities, those videos that people do that are just really, really funny, or you know, staged things that are done in public. And I did think that it might be fun if I had the time, which I think I do, to show you a guerrilla marketing campaign that we did at the college that might inspire you to consider some guerrilla marketing techniques for your particular business. And I'll just set the stage. This was around our restaurant, which is run and operated by our students in the hospitality department. And they were struggling to get customers. They had recently opened, and they needed customers to, you know, visit the restaurant, experience the restaurant. But we were struggling to get them in there, and we thought, well, let's try something. Let's try a guerrilla marketing campaign. And so we did that, and the restaurant has been full ever since. But I'll show you quickly this short video, and I'll end with that. So I'm going to change my screen share, if that's okay. Okay. And there you go. There you go. All right. Let's do this. Can you hear the audio?
No, I don't hear anything coming through, Christian.
You know what? Let's try that again, I think. Because I think you have to share the audio when you're doing that. So there's a button here. There, that should do it. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
We know that you are very special guests and friends of Red River College, and we're so very pleased that you chose to spend your Friday night with us at James. I'm pleased to have the Watchmen with us tonight. And I'm really hoping if we give them a really big round of applause, that then maybe they'll come up and do a set for us.
Lying in bedrooms is easy. It's not like it's 5 years ago. We're covered in cake from the last time. I know it sounds weird, we collected in jars. That's just the way that I wanna be.
Oh, can't you see it's a life I don't need? Please don't make this thing happen to me.
The way that I wanna be.
Oh, can't you see it's a life I don't need? Please don't make this thing happen to me.
All right then.
All right, so can you still hear me?
Yeah, Ken?
Yeah, so I'll just conclude by saying what we did there is we invited all the most prominent social media influencers in the city for dinner. We just said, join us, our restaurant is open, brought them all in there. And as they walked in, we told them, just share your experiences. That's all we ask. Just share your experience. We gave them a hashtag to use, take photos, share it with your friends. We thought, well, that'll be good as it is. But then we had a flash concert. They weren't expecting it. The Watchmen happened to be in town for a concert the night after. So we asked them to come join us for dinner. And then we had hidden GoPros throughout the whole place. And that's where we got all that footage. We were able to cut that video, and everyone, of course, with their big social media following, were tweeting it out and sharing it out on their social platforms. So we were trending for a long time there on that. And then next thing you know, the next day the phone was off the hook, and we've been full ever since in the restaurant. So it was a great story of guerrilla marketing. That one wasn't necessarily cheap, but there are ways to do it that are really, really expensive. And there's lots of really great examples online that you can get inspiration from. So that's kind of it for me. I thought that's my overview for small business marketing. Good luck to all of you out there who are starting a business.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Christian. And if anyone has a question, if you just under reactions, put up the raise hand. I'll keep an eye open for that. And as we close off this evening, I just want to thank Barney Christensen from Christensen TDS Law very much for his time and expertise, and Christian Robin from Red River College Polytech. I appreciate the wisdom and advice that you brought us tonight, and your time, gentlemen. Thank you very much. And if anyone didn't have enough time to write all the notes, and I know I took some, this is going to be posted on our YouTube channel for the Portage Innovation Center. And have a great night, everyone, and hopefully your snow blowers keep running.
Good night.
Good night.